Welcome to Covered, the insurance law podcast for corporate policyholders. I'm Vince Morgan.
I'm Claire Cahoon.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Vince.
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty great. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Just trying to make a living.
Yeah. What's on your mind this week, Vince?
Well, like every day, we're wondering what can we do to do a better job for our clients. That's part of why we launched this podcast, right? So we can have conversations with really amazing folks in our field and who can tell us, kind of how they go about solving these issues. And we're thinking, what do we need to do today? Should we talk to clients about hurricane season? Because it's that time of year. Should we talk to clients about cyber, which is kind of cyber season is 365 days a year.
Unfortunately.
And all these kinds of things. So we're just here trying to make a living and help our clients accomplish their goals to the extent we can.
Vince, you mentioned hurricanes. And as you know, I literally just moved to Houston in May. So there was a slight hurricane threat over the summer, and I absolutely panicked and drove to Austin 2 days before. Have you ever had to file your own insurance claims for hurricane damage? That was an exasperated sound.
I've done one.
One? How'd it go? Scale 1 to 10.
So I had one homeowner claim for hurricane damage. Actually, that's not true. I've had two. Well, the first one, the carrier denied coverage. Even
Were
though
they right?
The notice... no, of course not. The notice was very carefully drafted, and they said, well, this isn't covered because of, whatever. And I said, so I wrote back and I said, it is impossible for me to understand how you concluded that this is not covered when the notice didn't say anything about what you're talking about. You didn't come out and visit the property. You didn't have a phone call to ask what happened. You have no information at all about, what happened, and you're denying coverage.
Yeah.
And they came back and said, you were absolutely right. And they sent someone out and they came out and said, yep, this is all covered. And here's a check.
Do you think they Googled you by chance?
They might. That's possible.
We're not messing with this guy.
That certainly is possible. And that would have been helpful. The second one I had was more complicated, and they came out and said, well, the good news is most of this is covered. We have this one little tiny thing, and we're not sure if that's covered or not. And I said, well, if you're not sure, what does that lady? They said, well, you know what? We're going to go ahead and take care of this anyway. And I said, okay, God bless you. Thank
nice.
you. Yeah, wasn't
that's
it?
So nice.
Yeah. Now, sadly, that is not the norm, I think. I feel like,
that's the vibe I'm getting. The more and more I work in this space.
That's how the process should go. But unfortunately, too often it does not go that way. And, we don't really do any homeowners claims unless it's someone down the hall, work with, as right? Every time there's any kind of storm here, we tell all of our team here at Bracewell, look, if you have been personally affected by this event, we will help you with your claim. And that's really the only time we get involved in, sort of homeowner stuff. If it's a, client or one of our colleagues who we work with, we'll help them. But most of the time, we're doing large commercial claims and and those are a whole different kettle of fish. But yeah, so I've had a couple of experiences.
Different, but at least from my understanding, at times equally, if not more, frustrating for the person on the policyholder side.
They certainly can be. And that's our job. That's why we come in here and we try and help. We try and help get claims going on the right track. If they get off track, we try and get them back on track. And then, if after all of that, it still doesn't work out, then we try and help our clients get to the right answer, at the courthouse, right? They build courthouses for a reason. And although we never like to go there as our first instance, sometimes it's the only viable path. And when that's where we end up, then, we try and do a good job there too.
Well, I'd imagine, though, that if you are in court and it does come down to that, It is a lot more fun if you are faced up against someone like today's podcast guest, our dear friend, Jamie Carsey.
You are absolutely right about that, Claire. It is way more fun when you're litigating with friends, right? And I think clients, I think they wonder about this. They wonder on both sides, right? When the insurance company lawyers, they say, oh, well, Vince Morgan has shown up on the other side. And the carrier lawyer says, oh, Vince is a friend of ours. And, we've had lots of cases with him and we'll get along fine. The carriers are like, are you too friendly with this guy or whatever? And
are you on his side?
Our clients, right. Our clients wonder the same thing, right? When we see a carrier lawyer that we know well show up and we're like, oh, hey, it's so-and-so's here. We've had cases with them for, years and years and years. We get along great, and the answer is, look, we're going to do our level best to get to the right outcome for our client, and our adversaries on the other side, they will do everything they can to get to the right outcome for their clients. But what we won't do is waste money and time and effort fighting with each other about, whose office we're going to take a deposition at, or, who's going to do this first, or, whatever. I mean, there's none of that. It's just, let's focus on the merits and let's see what we can do to, kind of get this thing resolved as painlessly as possible for everyone. And I think that works to our client's interest. And yes, that does bring up today's guest. Right. So we normally look at things from the way that we look at things on this podcast, right? Which is, in-house lawyers, risk managers. These are our typical, main client contacts. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we work with other folks, as you know, Claire, inside companies. But usually those are the two groups that we work with most, and it's our clients. And then we, of course, work with brokers to help get things. If the client is trying to, place coverage, renew it, whatever, or if they have a claim, we work with claim advocates, and we've had some of those podcast guests. But every now and then, we want this to be a useful podcast for our friends, and yes. So our listeners and our audience. And so I thought, what would be a great opportunity? Let's get a carrier side lawyer to come over and talk to us and share their insights. And so that's today's guest. It's Jamie Carsey, who is a very high-ranking lawyer in-house at Markel, which owns, companies like Evanston Insurance Company and some others. And so Jamie has been gracious enough to come and talk to our show and share some insights from the carrier perspective, which, again, you aren't going to hear a lot of from us since that's not our viewpoint. But and that's why it's important for us to get that view and share it with our clients.
Get the perspective, how about maybe steal some secrets. We want to get her perspective, and then maybe also steal some secrets.
Right. And with any luck, that'll happen. So let's not dither anymore. Let's go ahead and get on to our interview with Jamie Carsey. How's that sound?
Sounds fantastic.
All right, here we go. Well, thank you, Jamie. Welcome to Covered, our podcast here, the insurance podcast for corporate policyholders. We're so excited to have you join us today and share your thoughts, and we just want to welcome you to our little show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, great. So we're going to cover a few things today, Jamie. Our listeners, it's a very sophisticated crowd, and it's mostly people that you would consider to be customers, because, of course, all we do is represent corporate policyholders here. We do always want to know sort of different perspectives. And so we've had, our guests have ranged from general counsel at some of our insured clients to risk managers. And now here, Jamie, we have had some broker guests too. And so we try and bring different perspectives, and it's really exciting to have you here. So tell us, first off, I want to assure you, I know, Jamie, we've been friends for a long time. You told us once that you went out and had lunch with a lawyer that we know, and while having lunch, he apparently served you with a lawsuit, I guess, during dessert or something like that, right?
That is correct.
Yes. I want to assure you that for the time we spend here today, we will not be serving your company with a lawsuit. So you can rest easy, not during this podcast recording.
I appreciate that. That is the new disclaimer that I require now before all of my appearances. In addition to, of course, that the opinions that I have may not be the opinions of Markel as a company. Understood.
And so we will not be talking about service of process today. And the opinions you have probably won't get too substantive. So hopefully we'll be fine. All right. So
I prefer service of process after lunch. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I will tell that to our team next time we do serve your company with a lawsuit. We'll make sure and do it after lunch.
Appreciate that.
All right. Now that we have that out of the way. So our audience, again, a very sophisticated crowd, and they like to hear kind of how careers evolve, right? And so, as you know, since we represent corporate policyholders, we work with a couple of groups in our clients' internal workings, and sometimes more than a couple, but the two most common are the risk management department and then the in-house legal department, right? And sometimes those are part of the same department for some of our clients, and sometimes they are different departments, right? Sometimes the risk management is part of treasury and that kind of function, and sometimes it's sort of part of the legal department. But those are the groups that we work with most, and they they always like to hear how people's careers evolve and stuff. So if you could tell us, I've known you since you were a practicing lawyer at a law firm, and then you went in-house. And then since you went in-house, your career has evolved yet more. So if you could just tell us a little bit about, kind of that part of it, I think that'd be a great place to start.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to. So I have always been in insurance in my career. I'm so excited that you guys have an insurance coverage podcast. I can't wait to listen. I'm going to be your biggest fan. So I started out at the law firm of Thompson Co. I clerked with them in law school. And then I started working for them right after law school. I've always wanted to do civil litigation, always wanted to try cases. I always thought that'd be really exciting. And I just landed in their insurance section. They have a pretty large insurance section at Thompson Co. They always have. They have a long-standing reputation of being an insurance coverage and insurance defense firm in Texas. And I got to work with some really great people, and I just loved it from the very beginning. I cut my teeth on loss policy, long tail environmental claims. I think I was working 3 years before I ever got a case with a policy.
Wow.
So it was great. So, you just learn all the different types of issues that come up in insurance in a lot of those cases. And I just loved it from day one. For 5 minutes, they tried to make me an asbestos defense attorney, and that is not a good fit. No. That was bad. That's not for my personality. So I was much better suited to insurance, and I started to develop a book of business there and became a partner there at that firm. And then one of my favorite clients, Markel, reached out to me and asked me if I was interested in coming in-house to start their internal coverage counsel group. So for all the insurance coverage lawyers in the audience, I think all of our secret dream jobs is to sit in our house in our pajamas and write coverage positions. And they basically gave me that job. And so I took it, and it was really great. And I started their in-house coverage team at Markel. And then after a couple of years, my boss retired. So I was promoted to her position. So now I oversee a team of lawyers that do internal coverage analysis for Markel, a really great group of attorneys, and then also a group of attorneys that manages the extra contractual litigation against the company, which are the ones Vince.
We do run into them from time to time. Yeah. You guys always hire very fine lawyers, and we look forward to working against them every time. I mean, it's what's interesting, and you remember this, Jamie, from your days back then, and I'm sure today too, is when you see great lawyers on the other side, you think two things. You think, one, this hill just got a little steeper, a little tougher. But you also think, hey, it's great because we're not going to argue over whose office we're going to take a deposition at, or, who, needed to produce what documents when. I mean, these things just get worked out, right? We may or may not agree on the merits, but at least, there is no nitpicky arguments on those kinds of things, which is really nice.
I love it. I think most people that do what we do would prefer to have a really good, strong attorney on the other side. It doesn't, I think, make it harder. I think it makes it easier because you're able to really drill down on the issues, and you're not caught sort of teaching someone what is or is not at issue in this particular insurance case. You don't have to go through that part of the litigation in the courts to narrow down the issues. You can really kind of do that with your opposing counsel. I always prefer to have great lawyers on the other side. I think it makes it better for everyone.
That's right. And, I'll tell you, interesting side note, the judge with the shortest tenure in the history of the Southern District of Texas, it was about a year and a half. Apparently, it was Finus Cowan, and he was a world-class lawyer and got on the bench. And I think ran into, some of the lawyering wasn't as good as he was used to seeing. And then thought, I should go back to trying the cases I was trying. That's definitely a real thing. All right. So let's, kind of carrying on this theme. So I agree with you. I think it's great when I see great lawyers on the other side. Again, it gets a little harder, right? But I view it as a welcome trade to really focus on the issues. And again, you don't get into some of these squabbles that you sometimes see lawyers find themselves in. I remember one of the outside counsel that I know you use regularly, we had a case not involving your company, but one of their other insurance company clients. And we had a hearing, which I know you've heard about lots of times, where we got there and it was like a 10 a.m. setting or something. So we got there at 9:15, 9:30. We're just kind of sitting in the back of the courtroom, kind of waiting for our case to get called. And then we watched for about 2 hours what looked like, also, watching a kindergarten class of, having to say, he started it and she didn't tell the truth. And, it was just like a bunch of, people kicking each other in the shins for hours. And then when we finally got up, our case got called, I started off the hearing saying, Your Honor, we've been watching your docket, and first, we're sorry. But secondly, we will kick each other in the shins here, but it's good, clean fun because we're great friends. And so we're both going to be arguing our client's position, and we're going to do our level best to walk you through the issues, but you'll see an occasional pot shot, and I trust you. I assure you it's made, in the best spirit, and the judge was just delighted to see that, right? And he's like, good, great. You guys go ahead, have at it.
And I think the additional part of that story is because of that, the judge enjoyed y'all going back and forth and probably let you argue that motion longer than he would two other lawyers who were just taking cheap shots at each other. I think he enjoyed y'all's argument. And so because of that, you got to put in more information and he got to hear more than he would have otherwise at the end of a long day.
I'm sure that's right, Jamie. And that's ultimately, I'm sure, why he ruled in our favor. Because, we had that extra time to, sort of really unpack things. So thank you for that. Do you find, I'm curious, you see, as do we, but you probably see more, my suspicion is you have, given your oversight role, you probably have more claims in lots of different contexts. Do you find that lawyers get along more often than not, or do you think that sort of the way that we're talking about it as friendly adversaries, do you think that's sort of more the exception than the rule, or where would you put that? What would you consider to be the norm?
I think what I see both in private practice and in my position at Markel is that for the most part, lawyers try to be professional and they try to maybe not get along in the sense that they're friends like you were talking about before, but certainly they try and keep things professional and they try and be reasonable. Obviously, there are exceptions that all lawyer jokes are made of, but certainly I think that mostly what we see is lawyers trying to be reasonable, and certainly Markel tries to, have lawyers that are considered reasonable and have high professional integrity. So I think that's what we look for. And I just think, and Vince, you and I have talked about this a lot before. I think that helps to resolve disputes if your lawyers are getting along and being professional and you're not getting in the weeds on, discovery disputes and things like that. I had a deposition when I was in private practice with an attorney I didn't know, and we were, getting into it a little bit, like you do, dusting it up in a deposition, not anything out of the norm, but I just assumed this guy does not like me very much. And by the time we got finished with the deposition, we were in Dallas, and he just said at the end of it, "So are you going back to the airport now?" And I don't think he really cared what my answer was. I think he was just making small talk. And I grew up in Dallas, and I said, I'm actually craving Snuffers, and I think I'm going to go eat at Snuffers before I go back.
It's like sunshine in a little plastic basket.
I love it so much. And he just looked at me and said, "I like Snuffers." And we went and ate together and had a really great discussion and got to know each other really well. And every case I had with him after that was very pleasant. I've referred a lot of work to him. You're able to kind of get past it all and hone in on what's at issue in the litigation to get the best result for your client. And I think on both sides of the docket, the client benefits from those relationships.
Now, I agree that lawyers getting along is a great thing. And again, it may or may not mean that we're able to resolve, substantive issues, but at least it avoids, squabbling on all kinds of things. And I think it's an important thing for clients too, right? Is to explain, look, just because we're friends with the other side doesn't mean that, they're not doing everything they can to win their case. It doesn't mean we're not doing everything we can to win our case. But it just means that, we're not going to spend a lot of time kicking dirt in each other's, face in the meantime. So I'm totally with you on that.
If you keep it clean, it costs less.
It does. It's faster and costs less.
Yep.
Tell me about your, because we're always interested in this. Whenever we submit a claim or help a client submit a claim, as you know, Jamie, we're full service here in our coverage practice at Bracewell. We help clients place policies and go through renewals and things like that. We help them navigate the claims process when they have claims come up, and then if they get the wrong answer, which is anything other than here, what do we need to pay you, right?
Sure.
Then we help Sure. Then we help clients get in there and fight with their insurance companies. But the question I've got is, kind of given your role, and one thing that we always wonder when we, hit send on a claim submission or whatever, we sort of wonder, what's going to happen here? Is this the insurance company's going to look at this? Or are they going to farm it out to outside counsel? Or are they going to farm it out to an adjuster who's, an independent adjuster, or what? Can you tell us, without going into the secret sauce of Markel, but just tell us, sort of generally, do you approach those in any one particular way, or is it kind of case by case? How would you characterize that?
Okay, so I imagine that all insurance companies do this a little bit differently. At Markel, our claims professionals really have a high level of expertise in the claims that they are handling. So we really rely on them to be an integral part of the claims process. Now, we may use independent adjusters or we may use counsel in some instances to assist with that, but they really are the ones that are running the claim. And for us, we really try and keep on the coverage side, we really try and keep as much of that in-house as we can before going to outside counsel. But also, we want to be aware that if we need some additional information or we need additional expertise to take a look at an issue, we want to be sure that we do that and do our due diligence and being sure we get to the right result.
That's helpful. Thank you. Appreciate that. So speaking of...
That's coming back to me in a deposition. I can feel it.
It's possible. It's possible. Well, it probably wouldn't come back to you. May come back to
someone,
some witness. Yes. No. I think that's a helpful insight there. So I'd love to know kind of your perspective. As I remember when you were working, when you were outside counsel, and you'd tell me some of the, jokers you had to work against and this kind of stuff. But I'm curious, what do you find is, from your perspective, what are the easiest kinds of claims to resolve versus what issues are just sort of intractable? If you see something you say like, oh, this is issue X, okay, that'll be easy, we'll work through that. Or if you see this is issue Y, you're like, let me, grab some Excedrin. What's your take on that?
I really don't see a real clear emerging pattern in the claim types or even the value of claims, because I think we've all been in situations where we think, oh, this looks pretty straightforward, or you probably even tell a client, this is pretty straightforward, this should go pretty quickly. And it just doesn't work out that way for some reason. And sometimes it has nothing to do with the lawyers or the claim. Sometimes it's the courts. The docket gets jammed up and you thought you had a quick summary judgment issue and you don't hear it for a year. And that's frustrating to everyone. So I think it depends. But typically, if you've got reasonable people, I think it does come down to the humans involved. If you've got reasonable people that are, trying to get to the right results, I think those are the easier ones to settle. And ones where people understand that, it's about money. I mean, on the insured side, a lot of times they've lost a lot more than that. But from the coverage perspective, that's what we can do. And so I think it's easier when people understand that that's what we have to work with.
I'm really glad to hear you say that because, aside from just the first point about, money isn't enough, but it's all that you can do. So more money and sooner usually makes those things easier, just so you know. Sure. Yeah, okay. Just in case
Hold on, I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll take a break here. Okay. All right. And if you want, I can just shoot you an email just so, you don't have to worry about keeping that, piece of paper there.
Fantastic.
But, one of the things I used to think early on that, I'd look at a situation and I think, okay, obviously there's like a disconnect here and with a couple of phone calls and an email, and if they hire a lawyer that we know, then, we'll just have a conversation with them and, we ought to be able to get this worked out, right? This is, we'll just explain the facts to them and then this will get fixed. And then, 3 years later in 2 appeals, we settle that case, in the courtroom waiting on a jury, right?
Right.
And then I've had other instances I thought, well, this will never get resolved. And then I had the other side call me and say, look, if I were to give you something, a check that started with this number, would that be okay? And I say, well, my client probably grumble about it, but I think you're getting warm. And then, pretty soon there's a check, right? At a number that works for our client, works for them. And then I agree with you that sometimes it's just hard to predict how easy or hard it's going to be to handle any particular claim coming in. But I was curious if you sort of noticed a pattern, and it sounds like the answer to that is probably not. But I just wanted to check.
Yeah, I definitely would like to keep looking, though.
Okay, well, you let me know.
I will.
All right. So I'm curious about this. I know for a fact that, which is kind of redundant, by the way. I know for a fact. I mean, you could just say, I know. Also, I know for a fact that maybe not means the same thing.
As opposed to I know for a feeling. Like what else would it be?
Right. Yes. I have a hunch that I know. I know for a fact that you deal with your insured's lawyers. I am curious if you deal with your insured's risk managers, if that ever makes it to, or is that kind of not lawyers, risk managers don't cross paths, or do you ever interface directly with, say, a risk manager at a client? Is that something that you do? I
absolutely do. My team definitely does. I only talk at this point in my career to the lawyers that I like, Vince. So it's a thin line
bless you.
For you.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. It's a daily question, right? Am I on the list or not?
No, we definitely really value our relationship with risk managers and or the in-house corporate counsel that's handling the insurance program for the insureds. We want to have sort of an open door policy. We want to be sure that they feel like they can come and talk to the person that they feel like is making the decision. So if my team is providing coverage advice and they have a lawyer on their side that really wants to talk about the details of this one case that's going to make or break how this coverage issue goes, then yeah, we'll get on the phone and talk to them about it. We definitely are open to that and want them to feel like they can talk to anyone at Markel that they feel like they need to talk to. We definitely want to value those business relationships.
That's great to know. Thank you. So next time we have a claim, Claire, we can just call anybody at Markel and talk to them. That'll be delightful.
They'll love it. They'll put you straight through.
I'm sure. Hey, Jamie said we could call. I understand that you're in the tax department, but I'd like to talk to you about this. Yeah. All right. So now, Jamie, I know you have fought may not be the right word. Well, it's probably true. Partially right. I guess put it that way. You've dealt with coverage issues. That's a better way to say it. All across the country, all kinds of policies, all kinds of things. I hope you will agree with me that carrier versus carrier lawsuits are a pox that should be outlawed. Because it is a wonderful way to screw up the law. Would you agree with me in that statement?
They are definitely not my favorite. Sometimes they are necessary, but they're not my favorite type of litigation.
So, and I, as a policyholder lawyer, these are, sort of working details we never really get fully in touch with, but I have always sort of understood from situations I've dealt with in the past and, people I've talked to that carriers essentially have, it's pretty normal for them to have agreements where if they have a dispute, they go and sort of resolve it in some process outside of a courtroom. But then I still see these carrier versus carrier lawsuits. Is it just that those folks didn't have an agreement or, couldn't figure out a better way to resolve their things or what? I'm usually ends badly for everybody. Right. And so I was curious about the prevalence of ADR agreements among carriers.
So I think that there are some instances in which carriers have those agreements. You see that a lot, obviously, in reinsurance and reinsurance treaties. And that's how they're going to handle any disputes between the insurer and the reinsurer. They're going to go to arbitration. And you do see sometimes carriers agreeing to go to arbitration to keep their dirty laundry out of the open court. But it doesn't happen, from my experience, it doesn't happen as much as I would have thought. As you said, you still see insurance versus insurance carrier versus carrier litigation frequently in the courts. So if there's a secret society of carriers entering into ADR agreements, I want to be invited. So if someone could call me, that'd be great. Because if that exists, I'm not aware of it.
Well, I feel like as you head into your 2022 business plan, as the fall comes and you're thinking, what are my goals for my department next year and that kind of stuff. I almost wonder if like starting the carrier fighting carrier championship tournament might be, a way to maybe if it doesn't exist, you could start it. And then we could, sort of maybe avoid some of those things down the road. How's that?
Or we could agree to do all of our litigation in March, and we could create a bracket, and then
God, yes, right.
Go through.
There you go.
And do it that way.
That's a wonderful idea. That's a wonderful idea. I will look, if there's anything that we can help, of course, from a policyholder standpoint, if we can help, we, cheer you guys on, we can maintain the bracket, we can set up the pool, whatever you guys need. So you talk to the other insurance companies and let us know how we can help you on that venture.
I think you can acknowledge that rarely do those opinions work well for you. So stop citing them.
Right. Well, I just wish they would stop showing up because, it's right. It's just a terrible situation. I can't think of a carrier versus carrier case that it seemed like, that any of us were better off when it was done. Right.
When it was over.
Which tells me that, those should be avoided.
I'm going to have to think about that. Do you get comments from people listening to this podcast? I bet people are going to start sending you cases.
We have a mailbox. It's called claire.cahoon@bracewell.com. And I invite any of our listeners who thinks they can find a carrier versus carrier case. Oh, my God.
Oh, that is wrong. That is wrong.
To send it to Claire whenever you think you find one. But don't worry, Claire, you're not going to get any emails, okay? Not for this, right? Nobody's going to send you anything. Don't sweat it. You'll be fine.
That is wrong. That is not right. That is not good associate management, Vince Morgan.
All right. I apologize. Let me back that up. You can send it to .com.
Oh, you're...
All right. Okay, moving on.
Or I will sue you.
Okay. Well, thankfully, I'll find a good lawyer. All right. Now, Jamie, we need to talk about some of our own cases, right?
Yes.
You mentioned that you spent the first few years of your career waiting on a case that you actually had an insurance policy. Did you know, by the way, a little trivia on that, did you know that the Stowers case was a lost policy case?
Yes, I did.
You did know that. Yes.
Probably because you taught me that, but yes, I did.
Yes. And you've read that article that some idiot wrote years ago about the Stowers case. Yes.
I have it here. Should I go get it? It's right here.
Well, I'm sure you read that to your children every night and they say, Mom, read it again.
They love it.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, I understand. All right. So I'm going to give you your choice. I've picked a couple of cases we've worked on in the past, and I'm going to let you pick the bounce check case or the dead claimant case. You decide and then discuss.
I choose dead claimant because I feel like bounce check is too soon. I don't think we have personally resolved that.
Okay. All right. Let's talk dead claimant then. Go ahead.
Okay. So here's how I remember it. Tell me if you remember it differently. But I think this is a good example of how a carrier lawyer and a policyholder lawyer find themselves aligned in a case that you did not expect. So the way I remember it is we had a trucking case in which the insured had violated some traffic law and ran into another person allegedly. And hurt them. Allegedly hurt them. And the allegations were that the injuries were severe. And so the settlement demands from the plaintiff's attorney were very high, based largely on a very long, very expensive life care plan. And I just want to caveat here that in order to need a life care plan, one should be alive. So we...
that seems simple enough.
Well, I mean, you would think. So we are going along in the handling of this claim and looking to settle this claim based on the allegations of a very long, very severe life care plan. And we find out after settlement, if I'm correct on this, Vince, we find out after settlement that the plaintiff had died. And so does not need a long life care plan. And so this was a situation in which we obviously had to try and undo the settlement and everything. But I think that's one situation where Vince and I were on the phone going, wait, what just happened? And how do you deal with this? And what do we even say? And like, how do you say to the court that this is what happened? So it was definitely a case in which it was a first for me. And we were able to sort of come together, carrier and insured, and say, this isn't right. And we need to get it fixed. And we need to settle a wrongful death case, not a long-term life care plan case.
Yes, I think that's a wonderful description, Ms. Carsey. You have captured it swimmingly. And the key fact is the unfortunate claimant who had other very challenging health issues, including cancer.
Yes, he died of cancer.
Yes,
that's a good point.
Cancer.
Nothing related to the accident.
Nothing related to the accident, right? But he died before the final agreement on, we representing the insured, naturally, since you guys had, agreed to take care of everything. There's not much for us to do, right? We're totally happy to let you guys work through it, and then found out that after your, I guess it was your adjuster who had, negotiated the settlement, before she said, I don't remember exactly the sequencing, either before she said yes or before she gave the final number, the guy had died. And so when the final, sort of agreement was made, he was dead at that time, and we didn't know it.
We didn't know it.
And we learned it later, right?
And we learned it by accident. And in other words, it's not like anyone planned to tell us.
That's right. Somebody noticed it in the newspaper. The poor man had died, right? There was an obituary, and somebody picked up on it and was like, wait a minute, is this our guy? And our first question was, he had a name that was, a common name, right? And like Jamie Carsey, right? I mean, 100 of those.
Tons.
And so, it wasn't anything like Jamie Carsey. It was like, Bob Smith. And so, the first question was, is this the same Bob Smith, right? Because, it was truly one of those names where, several of them. And in fact, so we had to, I guess get a copy of the picture, and I guess the defense lawyer was like, yep, I deposed that guy 3 times. That's him. And we're like, okay, well, all right, just making sure. And yeah, so that was interesting. And our client was like, look, we and I called you and I said, look, we'd like to see this thing get settled, right? We're obviously sorry that this accident happened, and we'd like to see this get resolved. And so that's our only interest here is taking care of this situation and resolving this claim. But we understand your issue, and so we're willing to be patient and let you guys work through it. And I think we ended up a resolution that maybe not everybody loved, but everybody could live with, and that was good. So that was a nice way. I agree with you. That was a nice way for the insured and its insurer to work together in a cooperative fashion to resolve kind of wonky issue.
And I think that brings it back to what we started talking about in the beginning, and that is relationships between counsel. Because in this instance, you're insured, which is a corporation, but also there are humans behind it. And Markel, that is a corporation with humans behind it. Those two people didn't know each other, but you and I did. And so we were able to, say to our respective clients, just trust that the insured's not going to, interfere. They're going to give us the time we need to get this done. And you can tell your client, just trust that, I've talked to Jamie and they're going to take care of it. And I think that if you don't have that, then, people can start to get uncomfortable or panic, and then more litigation ensues and the case goes sideways.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I think that was helpful in sort of, keeping people focused on how do we resolve this instead of having it spiral out of control, and it would have been more challenging without an existing level of confidence that maybe we'll get it worked out, maybe we won't, but at least efforts will be made, right? And so that was good, and I share your view on that. So, and I think it was comforting to our client, that we felt, confident that this would get worked out. So that was an interesting case. I look forward to our next one. We have one, but again, we're not going to sue you today during the recording of this podcast. So we'll save that for yet another day.
Kind of, thank you.
But Jamie, it's been really awesome talking to you. We've been friends for a long time, even though we're on the other side. We work together on the council for the insurance law section. And, we've spoken at CLEs and all this kind of stuff. We grew up in the same neighborhood. You were too cool to hang out with me. That's okay. All that. But I'll tell you that
I've grown as a person.
Well, I know. I mean, everybody has room for personal growth, and I'm so happy to hear that. But Claire asked me to ask you. You see, Claire, of course, you know Claire. And she has asked if you could comment on the following question. What is the most embarrassing food choice Vince has ever made in front of you? I don't know what that would be, given that, we both love snuffers and we've had barbecue together and steaks together. I mean, I can't imagine that there's really an issue there, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to answer Claire's question.
Yes, Claire is my attorney in the inappropriate dissemination of Jamie's email case. So I do know Claire, but
is it really a secret?
No. But in any event, so this question is hilarious because Vince does make interesting food choices, but I'm not embarrassed by them. And I will also say this, that I love going to eat with Vince because there will always be French fries. And who doesn't love to eat someone else's French fries? Like, that's the best.
Honestly,
they taste better when they're someone else's. So, so I enjoy that. I will say, and again, I don't get embarrassed, but I do die a little inside every time he orders a steak well done. It's just not how it's supposed to taste. But I, to each his own, and I get French fries out of it, so it's fine.
It kills you just a little bit that I like to actually have my food cooked. That beats you down?
It just doesn't. That's not how it was meant to taste. It's like,
I see.
It's like,
did you ask the cow? Did you hey, what's the proper way to eat a steak? And you talk to a cow about this?
Well, I think that he would agree that if you're going to do it, it should at least taste good.
I don't know. Claire, we may need to find a cow as our next podcast guest. And I don't know how exactly we would ask Bevo what, his preference is, but yeah, well, all right. Well, that's helpful. Appreciate it. And I look forward to buying another steak soon and having it cooked and then maybe you can come back and comment and we can be a recurring guest. Wouldn't that be great?
I'm sure that would be lovely.
I know. You're excited. That's okay. All right. Well, listen, Jamie Carsey at Markel, who is an amazing lawyer. And again, sort of one of my favorite carrier side coverage lawyers. We know lots of them and some are really fun and some are really smart. And sometimes they are really fun and really smart. And Jamie, you're in that category. So thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. We're very honored to have you. And we hope that this hasn't been too painful for you. as far as questions from a policyholder lawyer go, these were pretty easy. So, you handled them well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy talking with you, Vince, and Claire, and I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so very much.
Okay. Thank you.